In today's video, we're going to talk all about cold calling, and this is an essential skill, especially for age leads. But any type of lead that you're going to do is essentially going to be a cold call, whether it's inbound or outbound. This is just an essential skill for sales development in general. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to sort of structure a cold call, and most importantly, how to actually create this script. And I'm a big believer in scripts. And I always say this, scripts to me, in the context of sales, is actually more like an actor consuming and sort of owning a script versus a script in the sense that most people think about it is just reading down a specific sort of line of dialogue, right? So when an actor takes on a script, they look at the script, they read through it, they try to sort of put their own tone into it, and then ultimately they'll probably shift how it's sort of delivered until they own it, until it is native, till it feels natural to them. And that's what you need to do with a sales script. But the first step is to sit down and to write it and structure it. Because if you just get on a phone call, even if you sort of thought about what you want to say, you will have a tendency to ramble and just to kind of constantly sort of stream of thought. And that can be really off-putting or confusing even to the person that you're talking to. So first and foremost, it's really important to actually write a script, structure it, and then practice it until it becomes natural for you. So let's take a look at sort of those essential elements, right? First and foremost is just kind of your opening. And I really, if you don't script anything else, you should definitely script your opening, because you're only going to have a matter of seconds. And that's if they pick up the phone or if you're actually leaving a voicemail. And keep in mind, most of these, when we say cold calling, what in essence you probably will do more frequently, well, I know you will do more frequently, is you'll leave voicemails. So it's really important to have that scripted, and that's essentially your opening, right? So you want to make that very tight and succinct. However, at the same time, there's sort of three essential elements to that opening 5 seconds, which is what all the research says. That's the time in which you have to capture their attention. Again, whether they pick up the phone or you're actually leaving a voicemail. So those three essentials are just tonality, right? Relax, don't overcharge it. There's a tendency for us in sales to be very excited. We tend to be sort of... I wouldn't say we're all extroverts, but we get passionate about what we're doing, and so sometimes we can sound a little hard charging and over the top, and overly sort of animated in those first few moments. So practice your tonality, take it down a notch. Make it conversational, make it like a friend. You still want to have that passion. You want them to sort of hear in your voice that this is important, and that you are really believe what you're selling, and you should believe what you're selling. That's going to make it so much easier, right? But practice that tonality, right? It's not necessarily about what you say in those first few moments. It's about sort of how you say it. Because honestly, whether it's voicemail is a little different because they're reading text. But if it's a live call, they're probably a little sort of off, back on their heels or whatever. They probably won't actually hear or take in or process what you say initially. So it's going to be a lot about your tonality, right? How that voice is. Is it pleasant? Does it seem friendly? Does it seem, empathetic? Those sorts of things. The second piece is confidence. You should be very clear about what you're there to do and that you can deliver value, right? And so being able to create a script, and really practicing it and becoming natural with it so that you're confident in delivering it is going to be super powerful, right? They're going to feel a sense of professionalism. They're going to sense a feeling of expertise, and all of those are building credibility and trust in those first few seconds, right? And then friendly. Don't overdo this. Sometimes people get a little artificial with this. One thing, which I don't think is necessarily a bad technique, because it's what you often do when you sort of greet people that you sort of only know a little bit or you haven't seen in a while. You might say, how are you doing? Or how's your day going? That sort of thing. And that could be okay. But you want it to feel genuine. You want it to feel friendly. And so when you get them on the phone, again, just that tonality, that friendly. Try not to go for the deal, like, and try also not to. I hear this oftentimes in salespeople that I'm training in SDRs and those sorts of things is they're almost shocked when somebody answers the phone, and so sometimes that actually sort of creates an awkward moment, right? So anyway, practice being friendly. Practice, just kind of greeting a stranger. So effective openings, let's just kind of talk through this. And again, there's all kinds of different ways to do this. I'm sure in the comments, I'm going to get lots of suggestions, or maybe, hey, don't do it that way or whatever. But I'm just going to kind of give you a simple one, because I don't think you need to overdo this, but you need to practice it, and you'll probably find something that works really good. The things that I like to do, well, let me kind of do one, and then we'll kind of talk about how to break it down, right? Hey, this is Bill from Hometown Lender. I noticed that you just filled out an inquiry on our website. Just wanted to follow up on that. And I'm curious what exactly kind of led you to start looking for a mortgage, right? Or you could do something in a different context or industry. Hey, this is Bill. I'm from XYZ company. I noticed that you recently moved into Flat Rock, and I was curious if you'd had a chance to look at your home insurance coverage, right? So again, something super friendly like that. You notice the way I delivered it. It wasn't overcharged. It didn't look like I was like rushing in for the sale. So I think that's that's the best way to do that is not to sort of sound like that overcharged salesperson as soon as they hear the call. But some essential elements, right? I want to introduce myself. There's all kinds of, ways to do this, right? Maybe you just use your first name. Maybe you use your first name and pause, like, hey, this is Bill. And then you sort of pause for a minute, and then you're probably going to get them to say, like, who are you? So some people use that technique. I just kind of go through the whole thing, right? Hi, this is Bill. I'm from. So what that does is it say, hey, this is who I am. I'm not sort of hiding who I am. I'm identifying the company right off the bat based on the company. They probably kind of know what you're there for, or what your intent is. A lot of times, I'm working with salespeople that are getting leads. So there's typically some sort of trigger, inbound trigger that person sort of went and showed intent. But even if you're doing outreach, right? Again, you probably, if you've done your targeting right and your prospecting right, there's probably a pretty good idea that they're going to be at least interested in hearing from you. Telling them like why you're calling them, like, hey, you just moved to the city, or I just got your inquiry, or I noticed you do this. Giving them some context is like, oh, like I did some research and this is why I'm calling you, or you made an inquiry, this is why I'm calling you. And then, of course, what you're there to deliver, right? What you're there to discuss with them is really important. So I'm not a big fan of like hiding things and sneaking up on them and trying to get them to, acknowledge initially or lock in to a commitment to stay on the phone with me and all those sorts of things. I'm going to be super upfront because, again, it's sort of a filtering. I always say sales is a sorting and filtering process. This is definitely a filter. So if somebody is dead set against spending time with you, or it's definitely not a fit for whatever reason, maybe our prospecting was off or the inquiry was off, there's really no reason to waste your time. Let's get off that call and get on to the next one, right? The other thing you need to do in your scripting is immediately prepare for objections, right? It's just a natural part of the sales process. And so you should script out a few of those right off the bat. The obvious ones are, hey, this is not a good time. I'm not interested. This isn't a good fit. It's not a priority right now. Think through those and how you would answer those. So for your product, it's going to be slightly different, right? There's some general ones, right? Hey, if this is not a good time, hey, I totally understand that. Let's set up a time, or when would be a good time, or I think this is really important. It'll only take 15 minutes or so, but what is the best time for you? So again, sort of giving control back over to them to set a time and turn this into an appointment scheduling. That's not a bad way to do your kind of first call anyway, is to set up an appointment. It allows you to then sort of, they've made an initial commitment. You might be worried that they'll ghost you, but they made an initial commitment, and it's going to actually give you permission to reach out to them a few more times, right? Before that call or before that scheduled call. You can give them some more information. You can start to sort of pre-sell things, try to get them interested. try to determine their pain points. Sometimes I'll follow up if they say, hey, yeah, hey, call me next Thursday at a certain time. A lot of times I'll send an email after that just says, hey, here's 3 questions that I'd love for you to answer so I can prepare for our meeting, right? That sort of getting them thinking about the product or the pain points and the situations can actually make sure that they get to the call. And then, of course, it can help to prep you and overcome some other objections. So try to use those objections to turn it into some level of success and move forward in that. And a lot of times getting an appointment is sort of the best way to do that and overcome some of those initial natural objections to, hey, this isn't a good time, I'm not interested, those sorts of things. The other sort of essential part of your script should be some trial closes, some attempts to see if there's a level of commitment here and interest, and we call those trial closes, right? Where you asked, hey, based on what we've talked about so far, it sounds like there's an opportunity for this, or there's a good fit for this, and it'll kind of give you a sense of how they're tracking with you and whether or not they're getting to a comfort level of actually making a commitment. So we want to try a few of those. The other thing you can do in a trial close to kind of you want to, again, start to get them to say yes, or you're on the right track, or that's right. Those are the type of words and responses you want to get, because those are kind of mini commitments along the way, and acknowledgement that, hey, we've got a good fit here. The other thing that you can do in trying those trial closes is bring up some scenarios and use cases and similar things to their situations. Like, oh yeah, I was talking to a person the other day, and they, were kind of having a similar situation, right? They've got several credit cards. Those credit card interest rates are going up. Those monthly payments are getting pretty significant. So they need to figure out how to sort of dial that down. And one of the best ways to do that is kind of do what I call an interest rate swap, right? So you've got 20% interest rate on your credit cards, and you've got, let's say, a 5 or 6% interest rate on this HELOC. We can literally swap those out and pay that off. Or maybe we just need to do a full-on refinance, and I know you've got like something less than 3, but hey, we can get you in there between 4 and 5, and net, your overall payments between credit cards and your mortgage payment is going to be down significantly. And so you're going to kind of relieve that and open up your cash flow. So things like that, where you can actually bring in similar scenarios that talks through, and then get them to say, hey, does that sound like a good idea? Does that sound interesting? Should we explore that approach and kind of see what the numbers look like? So those are great ways to do some trial closes. And then ultimately, like I said, in putting these together, just to kind of recap the best way to put together a cold calling script. 1, write it down, practice it until it becomes natural. Focus on a couple different openings. This is a great place. You can A/B test, right? Try a few different openings, but write them and practice them. It'll also give you some diversity. If you're making a lot of cold calls, being able to sort of leave slightly different voicemails to just kind of take the monotony out of it. And it also, like, the other reason that I'm a big proponent of actually leaving voicemails is because it gives you a ton of practice, right? With your sales voice, with your approach. Even if there's no one there, you're essentially practicing that script. So we want to write, and we want to practice a really good opening. Run through, probably a half dozen or so objections. Right off the top of the heads, some natural ones. So don't be surprised by them, right? Craft your responses and make them supernatural, right? So that they come off and you just like move through them really quickly. You will get some other ones, and this is what I love to do after any call where I got some significant objections or got some new objections. Write those down and then craft them into your script. So you're going to have like kind of this massive FAQ at the end of these objections and responses, and that's super excellent. And you can actually, if you've got a sales team, it's great to get those out, because the more you sort of propagate those, the more prepared everybody will be to meet those common objections, right? And be aware of them. And the last thing is some trial closes, figuring out how to get some of those initial commitments and positive responses, and then to ultimately sort of walk that into the next step of your sales process. So hopefully that helps you to start building your first cold calling script, or maybe even refine the one that you've got. Always encourage you to subscribe and hit that notification bell So you get all of our training here from Age Lead Store. We'll see you next time.